إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله وصفيه وخليله، أرسله الله بالهدى ودين الحق ليظهره على الدين كله وكفى بالله شهيدا. أما بعد. And continuing with our discussion on social injustice, I left off in the last lesson talking about the fact that there's no system in the world that is more just or more fair, that establishes equality between human beings like the religion of Al-Islam. No system, religious, social, or otherwise, that is more fair, more just, more equal between people other than the system of Islam. And Islam came to do away with the pre-Islamic systems of injustice, racism, classism. I mean, when you look at the church is segregated. You got, the first AME Baptist church, you got the first this church, and the lines are very clear in Christianity in terms of black and white. You got different variations of Jesus. You got Hispanics who portray Jesus, as Jesus, as a Hispanic like themselves. You have blacks who display Jesus as black, refer to him as the black Jesus. You have Caucasians who, have images of Jesus. So you have various, forms of, God, right? Because some of them, Jesus is God, right? Or the Son of God. And as that stands, Jesus represents whatever nationality. Basically, that's what they're saying. Jesus represents whatever nationality you are. That's what nationality Jesus was. If you are, a Caucasian, Jesus was white with blonde hair, blue eyes. You look at the images that they have of Jesus, it represents their culture. Every form and every version of Jesus represents or is consistent with the culture of the people that particular Jesus represents. So if you're Hispanic, then Jesus is Jesus. And, the images that they have may either be the Caucasian version of Jesus or their own version of Jesus. Black people, Jesus was Hebrew. He had woolly hair and, the versions that, nonetheless, it represents their culture. All right. And that within itself is a form of racism. That within itself, because what if a person is not Caucasian, a person is not African American, a person is not Hispanic, right, and wants to embrace the creed of Jesus, he has to pick and choose, which, variation of Jesus, which color of Jesus, which culture of Jesus is going to represent him. And that's unfair. That's unfair that I have to embrace a faith, right, from wherever I come from, and I have to pick and choose which Jesus, which version of Jesus, right, I want to represent me. I mean, what type of religion does that to a group of people? What type of faith system makes you choose which version or which, color of Jesus or which culture of Jesus is going to represent you? That within itself is racism and classism. And you look at the church is separated by race and class. It's rare that you have church that are mixed churches, white and black congregants. You have Hispanic, churches, you have African American churches, and you have white churches. When you go into a masjid, You see the world inside the masjid. You go into the masjid, you see brothers from West Africa, you see brothers from East Africa, you see Nigerians, you see Sierra Leonean, you see East Africa, you see Somali, you see Sudani, you see Lebanese, you see brothers from Lebanon, you see brothers from Syria, you see brothers from Turkey, you see African Americans, you see Arabs from all over the Gulf, you see Arabs from, other places, you see Caucasian converts, you see the whole world when you walk into a masjid. Because the ummah is not united by a color or a race, it's united by a single concept. And that is, there's nothing deserving or no deity deserving of worship except God. A universal concept that is able to unite nations of people irrespective of their culture, their color, their language, or their tribe. There's no justice system in the world that has been able to unite people regardless of race, color, creed, race, color, language, tribal affiliation, social class, economic class. I work in an Islamic school. I say to my students all the time, when you look out into the classroom, if I have 15, 20 students in the classroom, this classroom represents the world. You have African American students in the classroom, you have students from Turkey, students from Morocco, students from Egypt, all over Africa, Europe. You have every type of student around the world in one classroom, not united by anything else other than a single concept, and that is La ilaha illallah. No other faith system in the world or social system in the world has been able to do that. The Prophet ﷺ addressed the pre-Islamic systems of racism and classism. The Prophet ﷺ never turned a blind eye to that. He addressed it. And today when we address it, Muslims take offense to it. Well, I don't listen to him anymore because, no, you take offense to the fact that I'm addressing a truth, an elephant in the room, or the camel on the musalla, if you will. You took offense to the fact that I'm addressing something that no one wants to touch. No one wants to broach the racism that exists in Islam. And it exists. We'll post memes or we'll post no racism in Islam. Yeah, in a perfect world, there's no racism in Islam. In a perfect world, absolutely. But we don't live in a perfect world, and as it stands, there is blatant racism. Not in the religion of Al-Islam, but in Muslims who proclaim to practice the religion of Islam. Islam obviously is free from the things that we attribute to it. Nonetheless, it exists amongst Muslims who claim to be adherents to the religion of Al-Islam. The Prophet ﷺ, in his last khutbah, his last address to this ummah, he said, لا فضل لعربي على عجمي ولا لعجمي على عربي ولا لأبيض على أسود ولا لأسود على أبيض إلا بالتقوى الناس من آدم وآدم من تراب. The Prophet ﷺ, he said that there is no virtue of an Arab over a non-Arab. An Arab does not have a virtue over a non-Arab. Nor does a non-Arab have a virtue over an Arab. Nor Abiyad ala Aswad, nor a white man over a black man. Wala li Aswad ala Abiyad, nor a black man over a white man. Illa bit taqwa, except with piety and righteousness and God consciousness. That's the only thing that separates a black man from a white man from a black man, an Arab from a non-Arab, and a non-Arab to an Arab. That's the only thing that separates us, is taqwa. Is your piety and your righteousness and your consciousness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That is it. not your money, not your tribal affiliations or your culture, not the color of your skin, nothing. The only thing that levels everybody in this religion is your closeness or your distance from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That levels everybody. Obviously, in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, different human beings play with a different set of cards, different deck of cards. Nonetheless, to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all are equal, except with taqwa. Islam did away with the pre-Islamic double standards, which is the law of the society that we live in today, bringing us back around to the social injustice of our time right now. Double standards in pre-Islam was the order of the day, and that is where rules apply to one group of people and another set of rules apply to another group of people. This is the time that we're living in right now. Our justice system, or injustice system, I hate to use the term justice system because there is no justice in the society that we live in. You have an ex-NFL football player who supposedly, allegedly, raped a girl and he got 15 years just a couple of days ago. And you had a young Caucasian male who raped a woman in an alleyway and he got 6 months. Where's the justice at in that? Where's the justice where a woman her husband is attacking her and she fires her weapon, a weapon that she is licensed to carry, fires her weapon in the air as a warning shot to her husband to leave her alone. And she's put in prison for years, put in jail for years, just recently released. Fired her weapon in the air. And then you had police officers who drove Freddie Gray around the streets of Baltimore, not shackled to any seat, driving recklessly crazy in the streets of Baltimore. He breaks his back, fractures this, breaks that, until his eventual demise. And every single one of the police officers involved in that acquitted on all charges. So Freddie Gray broke his own back, right? Sandra Bland put into police custody and dies in police custody. The pictures that they took of Sandra Bland, she was already dead. She never even made it to the police station. Every officer acquitted on all charges. They didn't do anything wrong. The criminal justice system that we live in did not find that those officers did anything wrong. Acquitted on all charges. Tamir Rice, who had a BB gun. A BB gun. 8 seconds from the time that police officers showed up on the scene, this young kid murdered, 13 years old, murdered. 8 seconds from the time police officers pulled up on the scene, he was dead. Officers did absolutely nothing wrong. They followed protocol. Standard police protocol and policy. They pull up on the scene and 8 seconds later, a 13-year-old child is dead. They did absolutely nothing wrong. But a woman fires her gun in the air, a licensed weapon that she is licensed to carry to protect herself from an aggressive, abusive husband, fires her weapon in the air to give him a warning shot, and she's put in prison, put in jail for years, just recently released. This is the, and I mean, like, the examples are so many. This is what is called a system of double standards. When a Muslim or someone remotely affiliated with the religion of Islam. He might just have a Muslim name, as in the case of the Orlando shootings. Just a Muslim name, not even affiliated with Islam on any level. He just has a Muslim name. Commits a horrendous act, a heinous act of murder of innocent people. And the whole Muslim ummah has to stand up and denounce his actions and apologize to the world. However, a race soldier, Dylann Roof, can walk into a church, murder 9 people in a church, and white America doesn't have to apologize for anything. Doesn't have to apologize for anything. They don't owe the world an apology. They don't owe the world an apology. They don't have to apologize for anything. Christians can hang black people from a burning cross. The same cross that people wear around their necks, and African Americans should be ashamed of themselves because of what they represent. You walking around with this cross on your neck. That same cross that you wear on your neck, your grandparents, great-grandparents, your ancestors were burned, hung and burned on those same crosses that you wear around your neck with so much pride. So much pride. In the name of Jesus, your ancestors burned on the same cross in the name of Jesus. SubhanAllah. And Christians never, ever have to stand up and denounce the actions of that individual or apologize to the world for the atrocities that they have been responsible for in the name of Jesus. And I'm sure Jesus will free himself from those actions, because he has absolutely nothing to do with the actions of people who claim to represent him. Just like Islam has nothing to do with the actions of the Muslims who commit horrendous acts in the name of Islam. But this is the double standard. This is the double standard that we live in. However, Islam came to do away with even the double standards, because double standards lend to the position of the dominant culture and further marginalizes those who are not the dominant culture. James Holmes, who killed 12 people in an Aurora movie theater, right? But he's not a terrorist. James Holmes, remember that name, who walked into a movie theater, who was strapped with ammunition, weapons, like he was going to fight a war in Iraq. Walked into a movie theater and began to fire on innocent people. Killed 12 people in a movie theater. Never once was he called a terrorist. Never once was his actions deemed domestic terrorism, because he was not a Muslim. He was a white Caucasian male, and white Caucasians never have to stand up and denounce his actions or to free themselves from him and his actions or apologize to the world. This is the double standard that we live in today. And the examples go on and on and on and on. Adam Lanza, who shot up the Sandy Hook Elementary School, killing 26 people, including children, mostly children. And white America never had to stand up and denounce his actions, nor did they have to apologize to the world for his actions. Nor were his actions deemed domestic terrorism. We flew our flags half-staff. We rang the bell multiple times in honor of those who were slain. And then the news feeds comes out about how, emotionally disturbed, how mentally disturbed this person was, how distraught his family were. But never once did we call him a terrorist. Never once was his actions deemed domestic terrorism. This is the double standard that we live. This is the double standard. The Prophet ﷺ was mentioned in the hadith of Salama أن قريش أهمهم شأن المخزومية التي سرقت قالوا ومن يكلم فيها رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم فكلموه في ذلك فقال إنما أهلك الذين من قبلكم أنه كان إذا سرق فيهم الشريف تركوه وإذا سرق فيهم الضعيف أقاموا عليه الحد ويم الله لو أن فاطمة بنت محمد سرقت لقطعت يدها. Salama, she said that the Sahaba were worried about the woman from the tribe of Makhzum, Bani Makhzum, which was one of the more prestigious tribes in the city of Mecca. Show you historic accounts of double standards and how Islam came to level everyone, regardless of your social economic status. Everyone was equal in the eyes of the Sharia. The same Sharia law that Newt Gingrich wants to send everybody back to wherever they came from because they believe in Sharia law. So, with all of what's happening here in America right now, are we to have any hope or, any trust or any faith in the American justice system? What system are you believing in? Obviously, you would believe in the American justice system because it lends to your position. It is in favor of the dominant culture, obviously. I would ride around with an American flag on my car. I would be just as patriotic as any other Caucasian that lives in America if in fact a justice system lended to my position, lended to my dominant culture. Obviously, I would be patriotic. But an African American can go to Iraq, go to Afghanistan, fight for America, flying the American flag, lose his limbs, come back to America, and you're still a nigger. Same country that you will go to another country and lose one of your limbs. Look at our veterans. They come back to America, the African Americans, and you are still a nigger. You're still black. You're still a nigger. I'm sorry I'm not as patriotic as you are. I'm sorry. But your system is not designed for people like me. Your system lends to your position. You are the dominant culture, so obviously you would be patriotic. Forgive me for not being as patriotic. But you go overseas and you fight for a country only to return home and to be looked upon as just another nigger. I'm sorry. We don't have any faith in your system. I'm sorry that I don't believe that your system is liberty and justice for all. Because it's not justice for all. Tell that to the parents of Tamir Rice. Tell that to the parents of Sandra Bland. Tell that to the parents of Eric Gardner. Tell that to the parents of Philando Castile. Tell that to the parents of these individuals that this land is liberty and justice for all. Tell that to them Where's the justice? So the Sahaba were bothered by this woman, Al-Makhzumiyya, this woman who stole, and she was from the tribe of Makhzum, one of the upper tier, top tier tribes in Mecca. So why are the Sahaba bothered by this? Ahammahum sha'n al-Makhzumiyya. They were bothered by this situation, conflicted, because they know the Islamic punishment for stealing, yet they find it difficult within themselves to do that to someone that comes from such a prestigious tribe, someone that comes from the upper tiers of society, social, economic status. How do we establish the Islamic punishment on somebody like that? It'll be easy to do it on somebody like Bilal, somebody like Miqdad ibn Aswad, someone like Ammar ibn Yasir or Yasir. It would be easy to do it to people like them, Safina, Zayd ibn Haritha. It would be easy to do it to people like them because they're black slaves who, their blood is not really as worth someone who comes from the upper tiers of society. So they were conflicted. So they said, "Man yukallim an-Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam fiha?" Who will go talk to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam about, this woman? Like, how are we going to establish the hudud? How are we going to establish the, capital Islamic punishment on this person when they come from the upper tiers of society? So they're trying to figure out who can go talk to the Prophet ﷺ on her behalf. Looking for a wasita. Looking for a middleman, someone to come in and speak on behalf of this woman. So they figured the only one that would be capable of doing this would be someone who the Prophet ﷺ was very fond of. Someone the Prophet ﷺ was very fond of, and there was none other from the youth of the Sahaba that the Prophet ﷺ was fond of than Hubb al-Nabi ﷺ Usama ibn Zayd. Hubb al-Nabi ﷺ, someone the Prophet ﷺ loved so dearly, and that was Usama ibn Zayd, the son of Zayd ibn Haritha. There was none from amongst the youth who the Prophet ﷺ was fond of like Usama ibn Zayd. So they told Usama, go talk to the Prophet ﷺ about this woman. Just let her go. We know she stole. We know the Islamic ruling regarding that, but just let her go. We don't want any issues with the tribe of Makhzum. So Usama went to the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet, when he realized what Usama was trying to do, he said to him, Ya Usama, أتشفع في حد من حدود الله? He said, "Oh Usama, are you trying to intercede in a case where clear Islamic punishment should be established? Are you trying to intercede in this situation?" Then he got on the minbar and he addressed this community because he saw that there was a subculture within the culture of Islam that needed to be addressed. Okay, so when we're talking about racism in Islam today, that is what we're talking about. We're talking about a subculture within the culture of Islam that is the antithesis to the culture of Islam. So no one should say, well, there's no racism in Islam. Yeah, conceptually or textually. However, in reality, no, racism is very real in Islam. The reality of the situation is very real. Right here in America, first world country, very real. Very real. Hurt people all day long. People come from, us being from a society, or come from a culture, or come from an environment or a country where they were given substandard treatment, quite naturally they come to America and they're doing better financially as a group, they're going to subject other groups that are less than them to the same substandard treatment. Hurt people hurt people. That's just how it goes. Nonetheless, the Prophet ﷺ had to address a subculture that was brought from Jahiliyyah into Islam that was the antithesis to the concept of justice and equality for all in Islam. And the Prophet ﷺ had to address it. He saw what was going on, so instead of just addressing Usama and that isolated incident, he realized that it wasn't just an isolated incident. It was a concept that if it was not addressed right then and there, then many of the Sahaba would have thought that this behavior was okay. So he addressed it on a communal level, not just isolated incident. This is something that they are bringing with them from Jahiliyyah into Islam, and I need to correct that before it becomes muntashar. It becomes something that is prevalent amongst the ummah. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said, Ayyuhan nas. He said, O people. Before he addresses it, he wants to reference, as I said before, taking current situations and interpreting it through ancient traditions. This is a classic example of the Prophet ﷺ doing that. He took a current situation and he interpreted it through an ancient tradition, giving them a reference from something that happened to the nations of old and how those nations were destroyed because of the same behavior that they are engaging in now. We have to always reference everything back to history. History repeats itself, and although we live life forward, we can only understand it backwards. It's the paradox of life, is that we can live it forward, but we can only understand it backwards. The Prophet ﷺ said, Ayyuhan nas, he said, O people, إِنَّمَا أَهْلَكَ مَنْ كَانَ قَبْلَكُمْ. He said, the nations that came before you were destroyed. إِذَا صَدَقَ فِيهِمُ الشَّرِيفُ تَرَكُوهُ. That if one of the nobles stole from amongst them, they would let him go. They would let him go. وَإِذَا صَرَقَ فِيهِمُ الضَّعِيفُ أَقَامُوا عَلَيْهِ الْحَدِّ. He said, and if the weak and despised from amongst them stole, they would establish the punishment on them. They would punish them. Throw the book at them, as we say. Throw the book at them. But if a wealthy person, from someone from the upper tiers of society stole, they would turn a blind eye. But if a weak person despised, the dissidents of society, society's throwaways, marginalized population of society that no one regards because of their socio-economic status, if they were to steal, they would throw the book at them. Right? Classic case of the ex-NFL player who allegedly raped a woman and got 15 years, and the young Caucasian male who raped a woman and got 6 months. Beautiful case study right here. Beautiful case study right here. So, if someone from the upper tiers of their society stole, they would turn a blind eye. But if the weak person stole, then they would establish the punishment against them. Double standards. Double standards. Which is a form of injustice. It's a form of oppression, of dhulm. Of dhulm. He said, Waymullah. Said, I swear by Allah, I swear to God, لو أن فاطمة بنت محمد سرقت لقطعت يدها. He said, I swear to God, if Fatima, my own daughter, was to steal, I would cut her hand off. I would personally cut her hand off. Not that I would order someone to do it. I myself would cut her hand off. Making it very clear that the Prophet ﷺ did not see upper class, lower class when it came to the punishment, that came to the practice of the religion of Islam. Inna akramakum indallahi atqakum. The most noble of you in the sight of God, in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, are those that have the most taqwa, the most God consciousness, the most piety, the most righteousness. It has nothing to do with your socio-economic status. Has nothing to do with what tribe you come from. Has nothing to do with, where you are in your social status or in your economic status. Has everything to do with your level of fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The same rule applies to everyone. The same rule applies to everyone. This even goes on in some households where you may have the oldest child who gets away with murder, or vice versa, the youngest child gets away with murder while the oldest child, catches hell on every level. Some of us went through that as children, growing up in a household with multiple siblings. And we watched our parents, run the household with the law of injustice, i.e. double standards. We may have even fallen out with some of our parents because of the double standards that they ran the household with. One rule applies to one child and another rule applies to another child. I'm a product of that. I watch, my parents, exercise leniency and justice with certain siblings while other ones were criminalized and demonized, and, every small, minuscule act was multiplied and magnified on levels that were just ridiculous. It happens in our marriages, where one spouse can never do any wrong and the other spouse is always wrong. Why don't you rule with the same level of justice that you apply to yourself? Why don't you rule against me with the same level of justice? Because when we see our actions through the lens of leniency, but when we see other people's actions, the only people we make excuses for is us. Make no mistake about that. The only people that we make excuses for are ourselves. Everyone else, we have a reason why you did it. You did that because of that. You did that because of that. But when it comes to us, I was weak. I didn't understand. I was at a bad place. I was this. We got an excuse for everything that we do. But we interpret other people's behaviors with the worst type of interpretation. Double standards around the board. Double standards around the board. And this is a form of oppression. Double standards is a form of oppression where one rule applies to one group of people and another rule applies to another group of people. So here in America, for African Americans, there's one rule that applies to this group of people and there's another set of rules that apply to another group of people. Right here in America. African Americans, there's one set of rules that apply to us. When we get sentenced for crimes that we commit, we get the book thrown at us. Especially if you don't have money for a lawyer. You're dealing with public defenders. Public defenders who's supposed to be defending the public against the injustices, but are actually a part of the system. They give you the illusion, right? With a public defender, they're giving you the illusion that someone wants to defend you. But it's all part of the same system. The public defender comes to you and says, if you plead guilty, we'll give you a lesser sentence. And it appears that he's working to defend you. But he's coming to you telling you to plead guilty so you can get a lesser sentence. The irony in that. How are you defending me when you never even heard my story? You never even heard my side. You never even read, the preliminary reports. You never read anything. You went and you spoke to the prosecutor. Prosecutor said, listen, we're not going to trial with this. Tell this guy to take 3 years and we'll lower the sentence. We'll erase this one, erase this one, erase this one, and we'll keep that one. We'll keep the most serious one, and we'll do away with the lesser charges. They're not publicly defending you. They're part of the system that is designed to oppress you. They're part of the system that is designed to oppress you. So, I'm not anti-government. This is not a anti-government rant or anti-government. This is the system that we live under. And we have freedom of speech, and I'm going to use my freedom of speech to speak truth to power, to identify the flaws in a broken system. Not use my freedom of speech to badger or to disrespect somebody else's religion. Because that's the order of the day. That's what everybody else is doing, right? Hashtag Paris freedom of speech. You have got to be kidding me. So we draw pictures of, what is perceived to be people's prophet, degrade and disrespect the religion of, billions of people around the world. In the name of freedom of speech, you have got to be kidding me. But you won't use your freedom of speech to speak out against the atrocities of Paris and France. You won't speak out against the oppression of Arabs that live in Paris, live in France, all over France, that a marginalized population of people, that the vast majority of the people incarcerated in Paris and France are Arabs of Arab descent. Marginalized population of people, voiceless, but you'll use your freedom of speech to disrespect and degrade a people's religion. Nah, to me that's not freedom of religion. That's not freedom of speech. And it's not freedom of speech using that liberty to disrespect or to degrade someone because of their religion. So Islam, this is not a, anti-government rant. This is not, I'm not anti-America. I'm anti-oppression. Hashtag that. Anti-oppression on any level. On any level. Whether it's oppression against God, oppression against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, which is the most important form of, the most important form of oppression that we speak out against, as well as the oppression against other human beings, regardless of their race, regardless of their creed, their culture, or their gender. We speak out against oppression. If that's a liberty that we have living in this country, freedom of speech, then we use that freedom of speech in a manner that will be, admirable, to speak truth to power. But the Prophet ﷺ said, if my own daughter Fatima was to steal, I would cut off her hand. لو أن فاطمة بنت محمد سرقت لقطعت يدها. That if my own daughter was to steal, I would cut off her hand, making it very clear that there was no double standard with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Islam did away with the pre-Islamic debauchery and immorality. Everything from Quraysh going around the Kaaba naked to the reckless sexual escapades that left children fatherless and turned women into whores. And we'll deal with that because that's a whole nother level of oppression. Oppression against women, oppression against children. We don't speak out against that in this country either. Oppression against women. You have some cities in America that have high rates of domestic violence. A woman goes and files for a restraining order, and that restraining order, that piece of paper means absolutely nothing because some of these women end up dead anyway. What justice? Justice for who? If you go file, a complaint against someone from stealing money from you or embezzling money, or if it has anything to do with money, we'll make sure that justice is served because there's money involved. But when we're talking about the abuse of women in homes where they have no authority, in homes where they have no way to defend themselves other than the system that has been put in place to make sure that she gets the justice that is due to her, we can't even protect her. So inshallah ta'ala, we'll talk about that tomorrow bi'idhnillahi ta'ala. Wa sallallahu ala nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama tasliman kathira wa akhiru da'wana anil hamdulillahi rabbil alameen. I'll open up the chat for questions and answers inshallah.